The sound of engines rolling like distant thunder had already faded into the afternoon when the small figure stumbled into the road, tears streaking her dusty cheeks, her chest heaving as if her heart might burst before anyone noticed her at all, and for one terrifying moment it seemed the world would keep moving past her the way it always had, indifferent and loud and cruel, until the bikers slowed and the girl's sobbing finally cut through the hum of chrome and asphalt like a breaking wave. She was small enough that fear seemed to swallow her whole, clutching the hem of her faded dress as if it were the last solid thing left in her life, and whatever she had come running from was clearly worse than the danger of stepping in front of a line of roaring motorcycles. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the idea that strangers can become miracles at the exact moment they are needed, take a second right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because stories like this remind us why humanity still matters. The bikers had been riding together for years. A loose brotherhood bound not just by leather and steel but by scars no one could see, men who had learned the hard way how quickly life could change without warning. Marcus Reed rode at the front, his beard threaded with gray, his eyes carrying the weight of a past that had once left him broken and angry before the road slowly stitched him back together. Behind him were men like Evan Holt, who had lost a son to illness and found silence unbearable, and Caleb Moore, whose hands still shook sometimes from things he never talked about. They weren't saints, and they didn't pretend to be, but when they saw the little girl crying so hard she could barely stand, instinct overrode everything else. They pulled over not because they wanted to be heroes, but because something deep inside them refused to let them ride away. The girl's name was Lily Parker, and she lived in a sagging house at the edge of a forgotten town where the paint peeled like old scabs and the porch leaned more every year. Her world was small, built around school, a creaky bed, and the man she called Grandpa, whose real name was Thomas Parker and whose body had betrayed him one quiet morning when his legs simply refused to carry him anymore. Thomas had raised Lily since she was 3, ever since her mother disappeared into a life that promised more than it ever delivered, leaving behind a child and a trail of unanswered questions. Grandpa had been strong once, a factory worker with hands like iron and a laugh that filled rooms, but age and illness had slowly carved him down, and that day he had fallen trying to reach the phone, trapped on the cold floor while the minutes stretched into something terrifying. Lily had tried everything she knew how to do. She had tugged at his arms, cried his name until her throat burned, and stared at the phone just out of reach like it was mocking her fear. When nothing worked, she ran. She ran past neighbors who weren't home, past houses where curtains stayed closed, past the bus stop where kids laughed about things that suddenly felt meaningless. She ran until her legs ached and her lungs screamed, and when she heard the motorcycles, loud and wild and powerful, she ran straight toward them because desperation doesn't stop to weigh risks. Grandpa couldn't move, and that was all that mattered. Marcus saw the truth of the situation in the girl's face long before he understood the details. It wasn't just fear, it was responsibility too big for such small shoulders, the kind that forces a child to grow up in seconds. He didn't hesitate, not even for a heartbeat, because some moments don't ask for permission. The bikers followed him as he turned back toward the house Lily pointed to with shaking hands, the engines echoing through the narrow streets like a promise that she wasn't alone anymore. Inside the house, the air felt heavy with worry. Thomas lay where he had fallen, his face pale but his eyes alert, stubborn pride warring with relief when he realized help had arrived. The bikers moved with surprising gentleness, calling emergency services, checking his breathing, steadying Lily when her knees finally gave out now that the crisis was no longer hers to carry alone. Marcus knelt beside Thomas, his voice calm and grounded, the kind that made panic loosen its grip, and in that moment the rough edges of leather vests and tattoos faded into something deeply human. As they waited for the ambulance, time slowed in a strange way. Lily sat wrapped in a jacket that smelled like road dust and engine oil, listening to the men talk softly, feeling warmth where cold terror had been. She learned that they weren't just passing through, they were on their way to a charity ride for veterans, men who had seen pain and loss and still chose to show up for others. Thomas watched them with eyes full of something like gratitude and disbelief, as if he couldn't quite accept that help had come from such an unexpected place. The ambulance arrived, lights flashing against the cracked walls of the house, and Thomas was taken away, stable but shaken. Lily rode with him, clutching his hand, while the bikers followed behind until the hospital came into view. They didn't need thanks, and they didn't linger for praise, but Marcus made sure Lily knew she had been brave, that running for help had saved her grandpa's life. Those words would stay with her long after the day itself blurred into memory. Life didn't magically become easy after that. Thomas needed rehabilitation, bills piled up, and Lily still missed her mother in quiet moments she didn't talk about. But something had shifted. The bikers didn't disappear back into the road like a dream. They checked in, helped fix the porch, brought groceries when times were tight, and showed Lily that strength could look like kindness, not just muscle and noise. Evan taught her how to fix a loose bike chain, Caleb helped with homework, and Marcus became a steady presence, someone Thomas could lean on without feeling weak. Years passed, measured in school semesters and doctor visits, and Lily grew into a young woman who carried that day with her like a compass pointing toward who she wanted to be. She volunteered at community centers, stood up for people who felt invisible, and never forgot what it felt like to be heard when she cried out. Thomas recovered enough to walk again with a cane, each step a quiet victory, and he often sat on the porch watching the road, smiling whenever he heard the distant rumble of motorcycles. One summer afternoon, long after Lily's voice had lost its childish tremble, the bikers gathered again in that same town, older now, slower perhaps, but still bound by the understanding that brotherhood wasn't just about the miles you rode together. Lily stood among them, no longer afraid, telling her story to new faces who listened with the same stunned silence the audience feels now. She spoke of fear, of courage, and of the moment strangers became family because they chose not to look away. Stories like this matter because they remind us that goodness doesn't always arrive in the form we expect, and that sometimes the loudest engines carry the gentlest hearts. If this story touched something deep inside you, if it reminded you of a time when someone showed up for you or when you wish you had shown up for someone else, please take a moment near the end of this video to like it, share it, and let others feel what you're feeling right now, because these moments of connection are how hope spreads. Before this story ends, tell us in the comments who this story made you think of and why it mattered to you. Lily never forgot the day she cried to bikers. Because her grandpa couldn't move, and neither should we forget that hesitation is a choice, just as compassion is, and when the moment comes that someone runs into our path carrying fear and hope in equal measure, the question isn't who they are or where they come from, but whether we will stop.